So welcome. It's good to see your lovely faces and a few newer faces. I actually know most of you. Um, and so yeah, this is our career in college workshop. And I know some of you um, are a little bit a ways away from making this choice, but it's always good to know what those options are so that as you're moving through your high school years, you can just have some ideas about the different ways that having an education and having a dance career can blend, and different options of continuing your training beyond high school or continuing life in dance beyond high school. And so our guest speakers are Andrew Carr and Nora Heber. Um, Andrew, let me step back for a second. If any of you there's a couple of you who are a little bit new and not in my program. So this workshop is part of the Rise Empowered Dancer Mentoring Program, and I have opened it up to some outside participants. So if you want more information, I put some information in the chat, and you can also put your email into the chat if you want the recording and the presentation. There's going to be a PowerPoint presentation that we'll offer, and so I can send that to you as a PDF if you want it. Most of you, those of you who are in the mentoring program, I already have your emails, so no worries on that. All right, so without further ado, I'll give a brief introduction of Nora and Andrew, and then I'll pass it on to them. Nora wears a lot of hats, and I don't even know where to start. She was a dancer with the Lines Ballet Company for 12 years. And post-career with them, she is also the national dance executive for the American Guild of Music Artists.
My official title is Western Executive at this point.
Okay, Western Executive of the American Guild of Musical Artists, and that's actually how I knew Nora first. For those of you who don't know, the American Guild of Musical Artists, otherwise known as AGMA, is a very extensive union primarily for performing arts, dancers, musicians, opera, and so that's how Nora and I met, because at Colorado Ballet, we are an AGMA union, or they are an AGMA union. And then I know her in this other hat as she's also a gyrotonics master trainer. And she's on faculty with the Lines BFA program. And she does career guidance for those students. So do you have anything else you want to add, Nora?
That's more than enough.
Okay. All right. And so we'll move to Andrew. Andrew has also an extensive resume. He was a professional dancer with Kansas City Ballet, Sacramento Ballet, and the Washington Ballet, amongst others. He also got his undergrad at Indiana University and his doctorates at George Mason University in bioinformatics. So he went from dance to science, and then now he is teaching and mentoring dancers such as yourself and blending, all of his knowledge with science and anatomy. And he's also a athletic trainer, or is that correct?
Yeah. Certified personal trainer, National Academy of Sports Medicine. So
right. So he blends kind of all of these worlds into his teaching and training. And because he has such a extensive background in academia, it's part of the reason I invited him, because he knows a lot about how to guide dancers into having both an academic aspect to their lives and dancing. So Anything you'd like to add, Andrew, before you move into your
Well,
presentation?
I'd just say that I've always done two things my entire life. Even when I was dancing professionally, I was working for the government. I worked for the US Department of Agriculture. I worked for the Department of Labor doing statistics and computer programming and science. I hold international patents. So my day job is doing COVID research. My night job is teaching kids, largely high schoolers. And I run a youth ensemble. So I choreograph and I still actually I just quit performing about 3 years ago, but even then I've been performing all along. So I'm somebody who's managed to find a balance to doing a lot of different things. And the students that I work with often find a similar balance. So we'll talk about that. So if you have any questions for me, please do not hesitate to throw those into the chat. So I guess I'll just kick it off. So just to get an idea of where you guys are, you can give me a quick thumbs up. How many of you plan on going to college? All right. How many of you plan on going the trainee route and trying to go through okay? All right. So this is different. Those are two different paths, and we'll talk about what the difference is. How many of you would go to college for ballet if you went to college? Okay. How many of you would go to college for contemporary dance? All right. How many of you would go to college for musical theater? All right, so we have some, I'll try to address all of those issues here. So there are slightly different paths, they have slightly different outcomes, and they have slightly different implications on what you could do with your future. So I have students that are placed all over the arts world. I have some that actually you will even see on television that I've coached and mentored. Yes. One of them was one of the 12 apostles with John Legend in Jesus Christ Superstar. She did Middle Allison in the National Touring Company of Fun Home, if you know what that is. Her name's Abigail Corrigan. She's somebody that I coached and mentored. So yeah. Anyway, we can talk more about that. So feel free to ask me questions. This is what I do is I teach people. So Sharon's going to try to keep me from talking too long. That's her job. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and try to screen share this really quick. Now, I've got a little presentation for you. So just go ahead, Sharon, I'll ask the questions that pop up. And we'll just go ahead and hopefully start this off here. Let me know if you can see this okay. Can you see this okay, Sharon? Great. All right, so this is a quick little presentation on dancing beyond high school. All right, so what we're going to talk about here is there's different pathways to dancing. There's different pathways via college, but we're going to specifically talk about two. You're going to talk about going through a conservatory or a university or a college, and we're going to talk about trainee programs, all right? So in the dance world nowadays, it was a little different when I went through it. It was probably different for Nora and Sharon as well. I went from being a high schooler to trying to do both college and dance at the same time, but not a dance degree at that point. And I got picked up with Washington Ballet and what would have been considered to be their studio company at 18. And then I was on stage 2 months later with the main company, which is unusual in this day and age. Most people, if they're going into a professional ballet company, are going to get their first core contract or their studio company contract at about 20 or 21 years of age nowadays. It has gotten later. You don't see a whole lot of people going in at 18 anymore. And so really you have to have some sort of an education beyond high school. So, and if you're headed into that professional company route. So we're going to first talk about colleges and what the consideration is. And there's different degrees you can get as you go through college. You can get a Bachelor of Fine Arts, you can get a Bachelor of Arts, or you can get a Bachelor of Science. And what that really means is level of focus and what the surrounding curriculum are. Now, do these matter? No, not so much. A degree is a degree is a degree, right? I've had students that have ended up with each and every one of those. The Bachelor of Science is really kind of interesting because that's what you would get at Indiana University in the Jacobs School of Music. It's not a BFA, which I find odd, but it's what I have. So It means that you spent most of your time doing performing, and there's not a whole lot of pedagogical or choreographic classes. You're in the studio at IU basically 4 to 6 hours a day rehearsing on top of your ballet classes. So it's like a small professional company, and that's what you would get. Butler has a similar program, but it's more technically based. The rehearsals are a lot fewer. So there's more academic classes surrounding that degree. It's still a school of music of sorts. So you would actually have to take music classes, but you end up with a BFA there instead. So in terms of arts degrees, you can go into modern ballet, contemporary musical theater, or I have students who go like to New York and they enter a program like the STEPS program or the Gibney Dance program, and they go to like Hunter College or City College of New York or even Columbia, and they choose to dance at a school or a program outside of that. So, let's talk about advantages of dance degrees here really quickly. You get further education. So I got some kinesiology, which is a passion of mine when I went to Pacific Northwest Ballet. I met Karen Clippinger, Dr. Clippinger there. That said, the majority of my kinesiological and choreographic education, the stage managing that I did, the learning to read a sound score, was all at Indiana University. I didn't get that very much when I was dancing professionally. So having that further education allows me as an artistic director and a choreographer and a teacher to have many more tools to work with. So I found it invaluable to have that dance degree in that regard, all right? I went to a program, as I said, I went to IU where I was dancing all the time. It was as if it was a company. So different programs have different amounts of dance associated with them. Some of them you take, a couple of classes a week. There is a couple that are 5 or 6 days a week. So it just depends on the program. That said, you will be, if you go into a dance program, the one guarantee that you have is that you'll be dancing. It's scheduled for you. You don't have to try to fit it into your schedule. One of the caveats that I wanted to mention, though, is that, and this is something to check out with different programs, is that classes are often based off of your level within the school program, i.e., are you a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, or a senior? There's a lot of institutions that say you take freshman level ballet when you're a freshman. If you are a really advanced student, you might end up in a watered down class for a few years. And I've seen that happen to people and they get very frustrated. So it's one thing to check out before you go into a program, right? Performance opportunities are also pretty much, if you're in a performing career or a performing degree program, either, you might have the opportunity to perform. And I say might, because if you were to go to Point Park and be one of the new people there, you're a freshman, you might get selected for a piece, but depending on the numbers that have entered, you might go through 4 years of school and never hit the stage. Again, you got to check out the program. How good are they about putting things on the stage? How often are there opportunities for you? Right? Butler does this brilliant job. Everybody gets cast every show. Now, you might not like the part you're dancing or the piece you're in, but at least you're getting a chance to perform whenever there's a rep or a program. So another advantage is you'll be around a peer group of people who also dance. So you will have friends who are of a like mind, and you'll have a situation where you can be in a dorm with those people. So you get to make some good friends and be around them. Whereas if you go to a trainee program, you will be around peers, but with COVID, some of my students who are trainees right now, they don't get to hang out at all. They are not allowed to see their peers. They have no social networking, no group. They're allowed to be in the studio and socially distance, and that's it. So I really are struggling because they don't have any friends right now. Okay, there are disadvantages to being in a dance program. All right. For modern and contemporary dancers, you want to go to Netherlands Dance Theater and dance, you have to have some sort of a diploma or a certificate to even walk into the audition. They do not want you at 18. They want you to have further education. So you go to Gibney or you go to Steps or you do the Lines program. You do something like that so that you can go on and then go into those contemporary companies. But Sheva in Israel is the same way. They want to see you have some sort of an education. And that can be a modern education, can be ballet education. They don't care. You can even possibly be musical theater. They want to see that you've had an education. There's a number of modern companies that require it. There's a small pickup modern company here in Charlotte that you can't perform with without a degree in dance. So they won't even let you audition. So it can certainly help you there. Ballet, however, you go to a ballet company and you audition, they may or may not care that you have a degree. Most of what you're going to see going into a ballet company are people that come out of trainee programs. They care who you've trained with, where you've trained, and what is the rep that you have performed, much more than a contemporary company or a modern company. So you want to, when you're looking at schools and you're looking ballet for a program, you would really want to think about what is the rep that I get to perform. If you go to Indiana University and you're getting to perform Balanchine, or you go to Butler and you're getting to do Swan Lake, just to throw two of them out there, or Ballet West, which also does major productions, on some of the other bigger schools where you're actually doing ballets and you're getting to work with people, that helps you a lot on your resume. Whereas if you go to someplace again like Point Park, where it's all senior choreography, or it's occasional faculty member choreography, and it's all new unknown works, they aren't going to really know what your ability is when you're going in and applying for that job. So getting a job as a dancer with a dance degree in ballet, it really helps if you have repertoire to go with it. Knowing who, the dance world is a very small place, who you were connected to kind of matters, right? And so knowing who is running a program is very helpful. One of the interesting things that happened over the last year is Christopher Dambois, Jacques Dambois' son, took over what was a modern program at George Mason University. Christopher Dambois won a Tony Award. He danced professionally as a ballet dancer. He is a ballet dancer, but he's come into this modern program. And so that's going to be shifting. And so he carries a lot of clout just by name, for instance, going other places. Violette Verdi was at IU for a while. So was Patty McBride. Going someplace where there's a little bit of name. So pedigree actually matters, right? Musical theater. Musical theater degrees are not needed for a career, although they do somewhat help, all right? They help you improve your skills. They help you mature. They do give you, again, that whole performing experience is really important when you're trying to go out into the performing arts world. You have to have experience. And it can be very helpful depending on the market. Pedigree can matter a lot. So what I mean by that is your choice of school. Certain schools get into programs a lot more. People that go through NYU or Juilliard actually have sometimes an easier path because there's reputation there. And I put that in air quotes for you because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because the first thing there says not needed for a career. So again, Abby Corrigan went right out of my tutelage onto, and I've got another couple of students that have gone right into performing straight plays off Broadway and stuff. And they don't have a degree in dance. They just got scooped up and went out onto the stage. So it's not necessary, but it can be very helpful. It gives you a chance to hone your skills and learn something. All right. So to keep things moving along here, double majors, minors, and other options. I am, we'll get to that. Double major is when you get a major in one field and you get another major. And that is really difficult to do with a dance degree of any sort. I have a student who wants to go for school for a double major in musical theater and ballet. Well, those are in two different schools, usually. They're in two different departments, definitely. And they both have their own class schedule and rehearsal schedules, and they don't talk to each other at all. And so there's no way to make those mesh, right? So you're typically stuck. Even at Indiana University, which has got a top-rated contemporary program, musical theater program, and ballet program, they don't talk to each other. So you are not going to be very happy with the result if you try to do both. So you kind of have to stick to one if you're going that route. Now, Indiana University gives you the opportunity to do ballet in what they call an outside field, which is close to a double major, and that double major needs to be something academic. So you walk out with enough credit hours to do, say, a degree in mathematics or a degree in English or a degree in history or an education degree. They'll work with the education department. They just won't work with the contemporary department or with the musical theater department. So they give you the opportunity to get a degree that's outside of dance. And in all honesty, unless you plan on going on in the ballet world to teach and are headed into an MFA, a dance degree really doesn't leverage you much within the dance world. So having that outside degree so you can do other things is really kind of important. All right. As I mentioned earlier, I have students that do non-dance degrees that still dance. And I've got one that has done the Gibney program. I have one that worked at Steps and got into the Steps program. So as well. Now, what I did, and makes me a little different, is I did a double degree. So in 4 years at Indiana University, I did a degree in the College of Arts and Sciences in mathematics while I did the entire dance degree. It meant a lot of summer school. It meant a lot of extra work. It meant an exceptionally hard load of classes. I don't recommend it, although that's sometimes what people have to do. I have a student at Butler in the ballet program that hasn't been able to make it work. She wants to go into medicine. She's won all sorts of awards through high school for medicine. We won't go into that, but we'll just say that she really wants to go into medicine after she dances a little bit. So we're actually working on her doing a double degree at the moment. So she's going to be working on getting a second one, probably in biology or biochemistry, a second bachelor's degree, so that she can go on and go to med school eventually. Okay. Jumping tracks here. Traineeships. Traineeships you want to think about as like going to a trade school. Right? It used to be that people would go and apprentice themselves with masters so that they could learn a trade and do that. Trainee programs have arisen in the United States in a manner that you go at 18 or 19, you get into a trainee program, and it gives you a chance to hone your skills, build a little bit of that performing experience, and get some extra time in the studio with instructors and people who are of a like mind. They're pretty intensive depending on where you go. It really helps to build your resume up if you go through a trainee program. Most people looking at studio companies have trainee behind them in some manner in the ballet world. Again, contemporary and modern is different. All right. That said, the biggest drawback of this is one, trainees are non-paid. You pay to go to school unless you're on scholarship, but you typically pay to participate in a trainee program. So you can think of it like junior college, where you pay to go to junior college. And we can talk if you have questions. I'm going to rip through this. If we want to come back around, since a number of you said that maybe you wanted to do that, ask me questions about it, because trainee programs are not all equal. If you were to go to Pittsburgh and be a trainee, you would be one of 75 to 80 trainees that is between the age of 18 and 20. How many of them do you think get chosen to perform with a company? Depends on the rep. If they do no major ballet productions, maybe 2 or 3 if they're needed, possibly Nutcracker for a handful, right? If you're a trainee in Kansas City, well, that's about half the size as a program. So most of the trainees manage to get on stage with the company, so they're building their resume. If you were to go someplace like Richmond, well, right now with COVID, they're not allowing the students to do Nutcracker or perform with the company at all. So, but the trainees have their own performing program. They're working on Serenade at the moment. They will be performing that, hopefully, if restrictions get lifted by the end of this year. And so you have the ability to perform. You might get a chance to perform with a company, because Nutcracker often is. And so you're getting that professional experience. The thing about being a trainee is you get injured, something happens to you, you decide you don't want to dance. That doesn't really help you in life going forward into anything else. A traineeship is not going to get you hired to do anything other than go into the dance world. So, great. So this brings us, and I'm going to let Nora talk more about this, but there are hybrid programs out there. And what those are is programs where a college is closely partnered with a professional company. So Indiana University kind of has its own performing company. You perform a lot as Butler's same way. You go to the University of Utah, which was the first ballet program in the United States. You're tied with Ballet West, which was created right after the invention and creation of University of Utah's ballet program. They pair nicely. UNC Charlotte tends to work with Charlotte Ballet, and sometimes they'll exchange dancers. And so you can get a little bit of performing experience with the company if you go there. And I'll let Nora talk about Dominican University and the Lines program, which is really awesome. Fordham has a similar one with Ailey. There's a number of these programs that are out there that are this way, that are hybrid, and that gives you the opportunity to be around the professionals while you're still getting that education. In some manner, kind of a best of both worlds. There's caveats there as well, but we can address that later. So one of the things you have to ask yourself, though, is what are your dreams and why do you dance? So before you invest in any sort of program after high school, you really need to think about, why do you do this, right? You want to think about what your dreams are. I mean, seriously, I'm a dreamer. If you would have asked me at 18 what I was going to do, I would have told you I was going to have a PhD in the sciences. I was going to have a performing professional career. I didn't know if I was going to go Broadway or ballet. I had all these dreams and I kind of pursue them and make them work. So that's part of the key, one of the key things you can do. I have students, however, that they like to dance because they like to be physical. It's not so much about the performing and the ballet. It's just they like the exercise of it. I have students that are there just purely because it's a social atmosphere for them. And it's okay for you to go to schools to dance if you know these things. I wouldn't really recommend you being a trainee though. So, all right. And when you start to talk programs, you need to know what your expectations are of the program and what things you might want to do beyond dance performance. All right. So I put together a quick list of questions you might ask of any dance program. Now, these apply to trainee programs as well as college programs. And you want to start to ask little questions like, where do your students go after they're done? If there are 75 trainees here at Pittsburgh Ballet every year, or 80, how many of them get jobs? How many of them go into the company? How many of them find other companies or studio companies? Right? If you go to a smaller program with maybe a little less name and all of them go someplace, that might be better odds than going someplace with a bigger name, right? College programs work the same way. When I graduated, the rate at which people went from Indiana University's ballet program into the professional world was about 85%. And if you look at the statistics, that is because the other 15% of the dancers were going the other direction. They were professional dancers who had gone back to school to get a degree in dance. So it's really important that you know, where do you go after this? All right. What sorts of educational opportunities are provided? What are the things you're going to focus on here? If you're interested in choreographing, do you get a chance to choreograph? Do they teach you how? Do they give you some skills? What are the sort of performances that you're going to get to do? Do you have any sort of kinesiological or movement science, if that's what you're interested in? Can you do dance therapy or dance history or something like that as part of what you're learning? All right. How does that pair with other things? All right. The performing I mentioned before, I'm going to mention it again. What rep do they do? Very important if you're headed out as a professional performer. That goes for musical theater as well. Because you get into a show, and one of the guys I coached many years ago went from MC in a small production of Cabaret to Broadway. Somebody saw him performing and he didn't even finish what he was doing. He finished the run and he was gone. Right? One of the questions to ask of a college program is, what is the return to program time frame? Some colleges, it's changed for IU. When I went there, if I had started my program as a freshman and gotten hired as a professional dancer, I had 8 years to return without needing to audition again or reapply to finish my degree. And that's really important because you don't know when you might need to go back. So everything would hold. They've narrowed that window a little bit. You also want to know what the department style is before you even bother to audition. Because you go into your SAB based port de bras will not fly at some place that's Vaganova based teachers. It just won't. And I get students that, my own students that go and apply for things, and I'm like, you realize that I didn't train you to look that way, so don't be disappointed when they say no. You know, you're learning, going to trainee program and going into a ballet program at college, you're learning to do other styles. That's part of what you're learning to do while you're there, is to fit into other modes, but you're not expected to. So, you know, and there's departments that are heavily contemporary or heavily modern. And so you have to make sure you know that up front too, because if all the performing they do is modern and you want ballet training, again, the performing is not going to be there. All right. So a few pieces of advice before I get to a list of schools. Best pathway into any program is to go to the summer program. Absolutely. You get a chance to meet the faculty, you get to learn the environment, you get to know the style of dance, what it's like to be there. Moreover, you have, if you go to IU's 3-week program, which you don't really have to audition to get into, you get 3 weeks to prove yourself to that faculty. You have one bad class, they're going to forgive it. You have one bad audition, you're not getting your foot in that door. You know, having a video, fine. You may take the time to put it together, but still, it's only a 10-minute video. Is that going to show who you are as an artist? No. Going to any summer program. So have an idea. That's why some of you younger people, Sharon was like, some of them are pretty young. And I'm like, no, this gives you a chance to go someplace this summer, someplace next summer, someplace else the next summer, and try places. If you think you're going to like going to a trainee program, it works the same way. Go explore the Line summer program. The students that I've sent there love it. Absolutely. One of the most popular things that I can say, go to audition for. So if you are auditioning, know the style. If you go and audition for somebody, know what they're looking for. It helps so much. You walk into an audition and you get somebody who's essay from School of American Ballet or from NC in New York City Ballet. Need to know what you're going to do pirouette wise for them. You need to know what you're going to stylize, because that's, you may do it really clean and classical and be exquisite, and they may balk at your style. So how do you know that? Look at the pictures, see what the rep is. Pretty easy. Are they looking classical versus contemporary? I had a student that got all the way through New York University's audition this year, and they gave her a chance. They selected 6 students from that audition. This is last year. This was going into this year of school. So 2019, they selected 6 students from that audition in New York to present solo work. Kicked everybody out of the room, had people run solos. I had coached her through Christopher Wheeldon's Cinderella. She did that. She found out that in the 3 days of auditioning they did, she was the only classical variation done. She also didn't get in. I didn't know that they were just looking for contemporary variations after a ballet class. That's something you might want to know ahead of time. So my fault. I didn't find that out for her. I didn't know that they changed their plan 2 years ago. You were better off doing ballet. So know what style the school's looking for. If they're looking for really classically trained, clean, technical dancers, or if they're looking for people out of the competition world. There's contemporary programs that you have a much better shot if you're a competition dancer than a ballet dancer. So knowing what they look for really helps, so that you know what you're doing when you go into an audition. Know the aesthetic of the art that they're looking for as well. So again, looking at pictures. Lots of programs are much better about looking at all sorts of different shapes, sizes, and colors, but not all of them. There's still a couple of universities that weigh in their college students on a weekly or even daily basis. To me, that's a red flag. I don't send any of my students to those programs, but just keep that in mind. So do a little bit of, talk to the students, find out what the environment's like, so that you go to some place that's going to make you happy. All right. And you will need to do a lot of auditioning. All right. It's a very competitive world out there. All right. So here's a list of colleges. Sharon's going to give this to you. It's a list of programs you can look into. that are fabulous for ballet in particular, all right? And if you have any questions, I can talk about some of the fine details of there's contemporary programs on here as well. Any of these programs. I have sent students through, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think all but 2 on this list. So at some point in the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, all but 2. So I haven't had anybody go through at UCSC or Juilliard recently. Oop, I went too far, too fast. And I left it with a short list of musical theater schools as well. One of the pieces of advice I can give you about musical theater schools is, again, get a feel for the department and figure out whether it's a good fit for you as an artist. There are some fabulous schools out there. Some of them want everybody to look like a chorus girl and want to produce everybody that's kind of monotonal. And there's places that are going to try to make you more of a lead or find your niche in the art world. And it's important that you know that as well. All right, I'm going to wrap things up there and let you guys listen to Nora a little bit here. So pass this back. Hopefully that was quick enough.
Thank you, Andrew. I know.
Well done.
It was a lot in a very short time.
Thank you. Just real quick before we go on to Nora, and she might speak to this as well, but if you do go into a trainee program and you still want to have an education, there are ways to do that while you're dancing. That's how I did it when I was dancing professionally. I will say it was very slow going for me because my world was ballet, and so I could do one class a semester, maybe one class during my summer layoff, but there are lots of ways to do that as well. If you really want to go trainee ballet track, you can still get a college education. It's just, it will look a little differently. It'll be online classes for the most part, but not always. And I know a friend of mine who's a doctor now, and she went through med school while dancing for Ballet Austin. So she says she doesn't recommend it. It was very, very, very hard, but it's possible. So, and then now I'm going to pass this on to Nora.
Okay, well, hi, Andrew. That was so much wonderful information. It was really great to read through it and to learn a lot about what's out there. I have a very opposite end of the spectrum approach, and I'm so glad that Andrew's here, because you'll end up with a lot of really practical information that you'll be able to use that I'm not able to offer you. I know a lot about these programs, certainly about lines, and I can be a resource for you. If you're interested in learning more about lines, I think I would prefer to just do that offline and have Sharon forward my information to you, and I can speak more directly to you about lines. If that's something that you're interested in, because that's the one I have the most information about, because I've taught there and I was a founding member of the company. But what I tend to focus on more, and I'm sure Andrew does this with his students, but he's coming in with a lot of practical, is that what do you need to prepare emotionally, really emotionally, for this process? And where do you want to put yourself? Because I also have a very eclectic experience, and I was always doing more than one thing for my entire dance career. And I also started dancing. I trained at School of American Ballet exclusively. And then I ended up leaving because I was very tall, and it was just happened to be the year that Baryshnikov danced for New York City Ballet, and Balanchine came into our senior class and said, "We're not taking any more tall dancers." Which was like, what? New York City Ballet, no tall dancers? And I spent 11 years of my life there. So it was devastating for me, and I didn't recover from it emotionally. It was very, very difficult. And I had extremely strong technique. I had everything that you can ever, if you were to put all the list of what you want physically, what a dancer should look like on a list, I had it all. And I also knew everybody. I was very good friends with Patricia McBride, with Violette Verdi. I hung out in their dressing rooms, Melissa Hayden. They all taught me private classes. I had extremely strong technique. I was doing 32 fouettes on point when I was 12. I mean, I was a baby ballerina, and then I didn't get into the company. And I was absolutely devastated and stopped dancing for 5 years. I went to Europe, I tried to audition, I gained a lot of weight. So I'm giving you this information because you can have everything on paper. And if emotionally you're not prepared and you don't feel good about yourself, no connections, no technique, no information, no nothing is going to get you a job. No resume is going to get you a job. So you need to know everything that Andrew, and I strongly encourage you to talk to people who have been through these programs, to try to find, you have social media. It's so much easier to connect to people who are connected to all of this than it was when we were coming up. You can find people who have gone to these programs through social media, send them an email, or a text or whatever you guys do, and say, I want to know about this program. Tell me about it. And everybody, they want to share. People want to help. So don't be scared to reach out to anybody. Like me, you now know somebody who's connected to Lines, so I can help you with that. Sharon's connected to many companies and many people. Andrew, you now know Andrew. You can connect through him to a lot of different people. So once you know somebody, pick their brain, reach out, learn everything you can. But unless you do everything you need to do to feel good about yourself, you won't get into a company and you won't get into an audition. So my recommendation to you is, what are the things that help you feel good about yourself? And it's very personal. I know things like showing up for yourself, not making your to-do list too big. Like comfortably challenged is what I like to be. Just a tiny bit more than what you are currently comfortable doing. Not so much more than you're comfortable doing each day. Like if you're going to say, I'm going to dance 4 hours every day, 6 days a week, that's just not a reasonable expectation, So give yourself reasonable expectations for what is possible. Challenge yourself, but not too much, so that you can reach goals that help you build your confidence. You want to be boosting your confidence, especially if you're trying to create opportunities for yourself, because then you walk into a room and you walk in with an energy that attracts people to you. It attracts people to say, who are you? What's that person doing? And then you get opportunity. If you walk into a room feeling bad about yourself, nothing happens. Okay. So that's that's the other side of the coin that I would offer you is, give yourself goals, especially now in the COVID world. You need to be more self-directed. You need to be radically self-reliant and create goals for yourself that help you feel good each day. And only you know what those things are. Start journaling, meditation practice, self-care. Those are the things that jump out the window the second you start getting really, really busy with the kinds of programs that Andrew's talking about. Then the self-care goes out the window, your confidence goes out the window, and then everything starts going down, down, down. Okay. So, I see you're all shaking your heads. You know what I'm talking about. That is key. I can't tell you how important that is, because I went out on the audition tour with every single thing you can possibly imagine. Body type, technique up the wazoo. I got to the end of every audition, didn't get a job because my confidence level was nowhere. And then when I built my confidence, people were just walking up to me in the street. It's like, you want a job? It changes. So you want to be a magnet. And those smiles that I'm seeing now, that's a magnet. Okay. You want to be able to walk into a room and say, here I am. You want me. Not just do I want you. You want me. Okay. So that's, I guess, my biggest message to you right now is, while you're looking for all of this, and you want to find a place where the environment is somewhere where you feel good, all of these environments are meant, what are they meant for? They're meant for you to experience, to hone your training, strengthen your training, also for you to figure out what you want. If you have an eclectic program that gives you contemporary and ballet and musical theater, I don't know, if you don't know anything you want, it's good to go to an eclectic program where you have a lot of variety. So you can say, what do I want to do? If you really already know, then you can go to a more formalized program that's a little bit more directed. If you really know ballet is for me, you know, I would have never thought I would have ended up in a contemporary ballet company. I could barely do what I was asked of those first few years. I would never. I had totally ballet technique. I took maybe 2 modern classes my entire career. But that was it for me. Being a founding member, a pioneer in a founding company was where I thrived. If I had gotten into New York City Ballet, I would have died there. I would have died. I didn't know because I wasn't exposed to anything. So, you know, if you don't know, expose yourself to a lot. If you do know, then maybe you can go someplace more focused. That's what I have to offer at the moment. Thank you, Sharon, for making this available and for having me be part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, so ladies that I work with, our first group session, we were talking about goal setting. And our second group session, we were talking about journaling practices. And so it's nice to hear it from somebody else, right? And one of the practices was writing down 3 things that you appreciate about yourself. And that was, right, for everybody, that was the hardest thing that's building that practice, the muscle of building your own confidence and feeling good about yourself, right? So thank you for those 2. You know, one is a more, you know, practical from the out kind of external things to look at, and then the other is more internal, and you need both. You need to do your research and then also look inside for what is the environment that's going to feed you. And also, exactly right, as Nora said, if you don't know, that's okay too. You put yourself in an environment where you can explore. So we have a question. Thank you, Elsa, for putting this in. She asks, should you apply to both trainee programs along with colleges? I will start with an answer, which is absolutely. I did that. You know, I had to have a plan B when I was told when I was auditioning, my first year of auditioning, I didn't get a single job. I was told I was too short. And I almost quit dancing and just was like, all right, well, I got my plan B. I got into some colleges. I'll go to college. And then in those days, pretty much that meant you weren't going to dance. You just chose one or the other. I was actually going to go into biology myself. But anyways, I trained for another year, did a gap year, and then got 3 jobs. But I was really glad that I did have those options. So it wasn't just like, you know, you can have your sight set on something, but I think it's always good to do both. I mean, it doesn't hurt. It's work, but I think it's worth it. Does anybody else want to answer to that? Andrew, Nora?
I'll jump in here and say, yeah, Sharon's right. Absolutely. If you want to be a trainee, odds of getting in are slim. So have a plan B. Always have a plan B. And the plan B can be just that. So sometimes it's a holding pin. I had a student that wanted into Marymount Manhattan's dance program and did not get in, and ended up going to Marymount Manhattan anyway, in biology, and took classes at Steps and auditioned every year, and her junior year got into the dance program. So because you get rejected outright at 18, as Sharon said, as Nora said, doesn't mean it's over. You're going to have to audition a lot, and you're going to have to keep trying. And there's places that are going to say no. You have to find some place that says yes. And that's a hard thing to stomach, but that's, you know, I honestly believe there's a spot in the dance world for everybody. There really is. You just have to look around for it. So, and Nora's advice is invaluable. So my students, the students I coach, all keep a journal. They're told to write down every day what they did well. What were the corrections that worked? I don't care about the bad stuff. That didn't work. That failed epically. Nah, You want to be able to go back 2 years down the road and go, okay, my pirouettes were really good back then. Oh, that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, this Viola at Verdi actually taught me to keep a dance journal as well. And not, there's thought journals. There's all kinds of journals, right? But she told me to have a book, and I would have all the different things I was working with in class, and I would pick one out and work on it and then write notes on it, on what it was I was working on. But there's also another thing. There's a YouTube video called 100 Rejections, I think. It's a guy who, it's a wonderful video. I'll send it to Sharon so she can share it with you. It's not a dancer, but it's the idea, and this is really hard. And I don't know that I've been able to internalize this, but I'm going to encourage you strongly to internalize this, is that it's all information. It's all information. There's no good or, it really is no good or bad. And I wish that you could really feel this at your earlier in life. And it didn't take me so long to understand it, because if I understood this earlier in life, I would have had a much happier life earlier. And I don't know how to instill this on you. This is the kind of thing that's like wisdom is wasted, is youth, whatever. Like, what is it? The phrase that something's wasted on the youth.
Wisdom is
what I want to say to you is that if you can try very hard to see everything as, if you go in and try everything you can, that's all you can do, right? And if it doesn't work, it's information. And there's a lot of different answers for why it didn't work. And it doesn't, most of them have nothing to do with you and how good or bad you are. So yes, you're all shaking your heads already. So maybe you know this more than I did. But to the extent that it has something to do with you, take it in and use it as information, and just keep on, it's like Groundhog Day. You just keep on trying a different way and a different way and a different way and a different way. And I think a lot of it is just to let you know, how much do you want it? How much do you want it? And you may not want it enough. You simply may not want it enough. And that is okay. That's okay. So you might find out, I'm not willing to do what it will take to get into this program. Okay, that's just information. It's not a statement about you as a human being, I guess, is what I want you to remember. And it's not a statement about your value. It's just a statement of what you're ready to do at that moment and what they're ready to do at that moment. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think, sorry.
So that doesn't answer your question about both trainee programs. My answer to that is basically create as many options for yourself as possible, because there's a lot of information in all of that. Even in the process of putting yourself out there, you're going to have information. So create as many options as you can for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, as Nora was saying, it's all information. That's something that we talked about in the audition workshop. When we had, if you remember, Amy Seiwert was talking about, a bunch of choreographers lined up, and one of them was like, oh my God, I love this dancer. And the other choreographer is like, you do? I can't stand her. She does that thing that annoys me all the time. And, so that's the thing, particularly different than academia, in that you're not graded. I mean, maybe you are if you're in a certain syllabus type program, but ultimately it's an art. So there's always going to be this subjective judgment that doesn't necessarily mean anything except that you weren't right for that choreographer, you weren't right for that company, which is information too. So nobody else typed in the chat. Does anybody want to raise their hand or type something in now? Any other questions?
While they're doing that, we can, talk about Edvin from John Neumeier's latest principal, who went to the Prix de Lausanne and got bounced the very first round of Prix de Lausanne, and was taking the losers class the next day. And John Neumeier walked in and went, you want a job? And he ended up being a principal dancer. Again, it's finding some place that likes you. My career in Kansas City was made because I took somebody's modern class at P&B. I loved his modern. I was terrible at modern, but I felt like I was learning. I was gaining information. And I was the kid in the back that couldn't do anything he asked, but was determined to try. And when I became available, they found out that I was available to hire. They flew me in to audition and offered me Swan Lake, that Siegfried. I was there with a bunch of friends that I met. The dance world is very small. So I've worked with Patty, I've worked with Violette, and I actually was Alonzo King's rehearsal assistant when he worked with Washington Ballet prior to him forming Lines.
It is very small. It's
Inspired
true.
me to learn how to do all sorts of contemporary dance. So it's a very small world.
It is.
Yeah.
Would you suggest taking a gap year from Elsa? You know, I don't think it's a bad idea. If you're asking the question, it's probably something that you need. You know, Andrew seems to have a lot of answers to this question. Go, Andrew.
Oh, I've had this work out brilliantly for students. So having a gap year. Now, what do you do with that gap year? You're gaining information, as Nora said. So put yourself out there. Go gather information. So you will discover more about yourself. You'll mature a little bit. And so you'll make a better decision typically going forward if you've learned a little bit more. I've had students that go and take a gap year and they don't dance a whole lot. And they're like, well, I'm really cool with not dancing a whole lot. I have some students that go and start a gap year and they're like, well, I'm not going to dance a whole lot. And, you know, a month later, they're like, Andrew, I'm miserable. And I'm like, okay, so this tells you really want to go do this. I had one student that wanted to be a dancer in college and got accepted absolutely nowhere. Spent another year training, worked. She worked grooming animals for an animal shelter, which is kind of important because we figured out what she really wanted to do is work with animals and dance. And so we got her into Friends University, which happens to have one of the best zoo science programs in the United States. They also had a brand new artistic director who was looking for dancers, and she ended up going to Paris dancing with the dance department. She's also the youngest trainer to ever be fully hired in St. Thomas to work with the sea lions. So she actually is a performer with sea lions, and she gets in the water.
Wow.
Performs with the sea lions and trains them to do tricks. And she works with the dolphins too. So she's still performing. She just dances with animals. But that gap year allowed her to figure out what she was going to do that way.
That's great. What a great story.
Yeah. I think it was Nora who reminded me there's no wasted experiences. Like everything that you are experiencing is preparing you for whatever's coming up. Like, you know, like you might think, well, if I'm interested in this, but it's not directing me towards that thing that I thought it was supposed to, is that a waste of time? No, you're gaining experience, you're learning, even if it feels like a failure, well, that didn't work, it's still learning. So it's still, actually, it's a success, right? Because you learn, it's all learning, and it prepares you for working with sea lions and going to Paris and dancing all at the same time. So
and I think it's interesting that, you know, dance is unique in that you kind of have to do it when you're young. You know, you don't, that's the thing about timing with it. But even that, I had 5 years off in my 20s and still had a career and still was a pioneer, you know, a founding member of a company that now is, you know, a pretty nice touring company. You know, for me, it was important to understand what made me happy. And, you know, if I look at the thread in my life, it's all, I love to pioneer, and I love to support other people in fulfilling what they want to do. Those are the two things that are my passion. Communication is also a really big passion of mine, and everything I've done has that thread in it. You know, so I pioneered Gyrotonic. We were the first studio outside of New York, second studio that ever existed in Gyrotonic, and now it's a worldwide thing. Now I'm pioneering. I'm living on a farm with my husband, and we're pioneering you know, we have a retreat center, and dancers can come. Sharon has come and done Gyrotonic trainings here. I just like to pioneer. And once it gets large enough, I'm out of there. I'm not interested anymore. Once lines got larger and we had a dance center, it was like this, now I'm moving on. But that's me, that's what made me tick. So being in a large company was just not going to work for me, you know? So I think that seeing the threads of who you are, the more information you have, that helps. Who are you in a group? Are you the peacemaker? Are you the person everybody goes to for advice? Are you the person who you're going to find information about yourself and learn more about yourself? And I also want to encourage you to. The reason why I think journaling and meditation practice of some sort, whatever that means to you, is important, because I think it's important to develop who's your voice, who's your inner voice. I think we grow up with way too many voices in our head, especially with social media. You guys, I don't even know how you do it, honestly, with all of the what you should be doing, what the should stuff. It's that's what I want to encourage you to get rid of, basically, is who are the voices in your head and what are you being motivated by? So when you're choosing a program, whose voice are you listening to? Is it your teacher? Is it the advertisement? Is it the this? Whose voices are you listening to? And the more that you can journal, meditate, the more you're going to understand which voice is yours. So, and that'll help guide you towards the direction that is best for you, because that voice, not the one who tells you what you want to do, the one that knows who you are, that voice is what's going to lead you to the best thing for you.
Mm-hmm. To dovetail on that a little bit, back to the gap year question. So I'm going to put on my science hat, put on that PhD hat. Developmental biology says that even as women, you are not fully developed mentally until you are 20 to 22 years of age, which means those voices will change. Your brain is still developing. You're moving from an emotional center to a more rational center. It's delayed 3 to 4 years for boys. Keep that in mind as well, ladies. Really seriously, they're 3 or 4 years behind you mentally, and just brain development.
Don't worry, we know, Andrew.
Yeah. I've got a boy right now. He's a lost cause. The girls are like, he's so cute. And I'm like, yeah, but anyway, he's 12, but he acts like he's 8. I diverge. Just saying,
and that's will change as you.
Part of the reason you go to school is so that you can have experience and change. Gap year fits into that mode just fine. It's giving yourself a chance to grow. I didn't go to college immediately out of dancing. I went and danced. Was dancing with Washington Ballet, got hired by Sacramento Ballet, went almost belly up, couldn't afford a contract for me. I happened to know Jean-Pierre and Patty, and they said, we'll put you on full ride to come dance for us at IU. Patty wanted to be my coach, and I worked for the Balanchine Foundation and guested all over the world, actually, with rights from the Balanchine Foundation doing Chai Pa and Who Cares and Serenade and other things. And so I just traveled everywhere and performed while I went to college and worked professionally that way. I also ran the school for them at Indiana University. I ran the pre-college program and taught the high schoolers. They brought me in to do that. So that's what my scholarship was for. So they put me on full scholarship to do that. So I was teaching when I was 18. So the thread for me, and Nora's thread is, similar. I've been a teacher for 30 years. I teach, I coach, I mentor. And I have mentored, and I don't know if you guys saw the nugget in one of the pictures. I put a little, I shouldn't, Sharon knows what it is. Here's a picture of me doing ABT's Don Quixote in the role of Espada. The person who's photoing that picture is who I was wondering if you guys had noticed.
This was at IU, right? At Indiana University?
Yeah. So they brought in ABT's conductor, sets, costumes, and ballet mistress, and partnered with ABT to do that production. Again, opportunity that existed. So that's while I was there. So we can talk about the other side of that later. Anyway, there's a person that's photobombing that picture that's pretty famous that I got to work with. Now, the thing you should know is that I worked with her as a coach before I got to perform with her. So I coached her. I coached her and her partner, who was Jose Manuel Cranio. So I took them through Balanchine's Grand Pas so that they could take it on tour. So.
And
it's Julie Kent is the person in the picture. And the reason I got to coach them is Patty McBride was supposed to do it, but she ended up sick. And so she called me. I'm actually younger than both of those dancers. So I was in there working with these two principals from ABT as a coach. So I actually got to perform with them. I danced with Julie, got to know her pretty well as a result. That said, the reason I didn't end up at ABT is I got injured. Kevin McKenzie was my coach when I was with Washington Ballet, and he called and offered me a soloist contract. So we're talking about low points in people's lives. Injuries happen. I had a tendon the week he called, I'd had a tendon crushed by a partner who'd kicked me in the shin. He offered me a soloist contract to go on tour to the Philippines with ABT. And I had to say, I'm sorry, I'm injured. That happens. The dance world is going to set you back. You're going to have disappointments. And I love hearing Nora's story because I went through my own trauma and ended up going on to perform all over and teach all over the world. So that said, I also had to figure out who I was. I worked with Anne Reinking, and she offered me Fosse, National Touring Company, and I had to decide whether or not I was going to do that or stay as a principal dancer.
I think, what's first of all, I'm so excited that you know Patty and Jean-Pierre. I haven't seen them in so many years, but I literally was a kid in her dressing room. I just was like, anyway.
Special soul.
So I think what I'm hearing, or what I would want to flesh out of what Andrew's saying for you, is that the path is not, I think that the path is not straight, and the path is not necessarily what you think. Okay, I'm going to go do this, and then I'm going to go do that. I think that what you end up feeling when you enter something that requires as much dedication as it requires to be a dancer is that you're going to have constant experiences that ask you, how much do you want this? And that's when you get to answer, and I think that what's important in those moments is to know whether you're answering out of fear or you're answering out of your real direction that's really down, because answering out of fear means that you'll give up, right? You don't want to give up. Stopping is okay as long as it's coming from the place that's right for you. But you don't want to give up because you're scared, and so what helps you to do that is what I was saying before, is showing up for yourself, is setting those kinds of goals, and constantly just showing up over and over again, developing that muscle of discipline that gets you through those times where you're going to be asked, how much do you want this? Because it's going to come up over and over again. How much do you want this? And there's an amazing podcast that tennis players, a bunch of tennis, like the greatest tennis players on earth, were interviewed, and every single one of them had a career-ending injury. Every single one of them, and it was what ended up the energy that they had to put into the effort to come back at the level that they were at is what triggered their greatness. So those moments where you're really, really challenged are the moments that really are the most important, because that's where the muscle that takes you toward greatness comes in. If it's easy, probably you're not going to end up getting great. You might be good, but you're not going to be great. So listen to those challenges. Go, oh, here's my moment. Here's my moment to step into greatness.
I love that. I really want to end it on that note, but we have a couple of questions I want to get to before we wrap up. So
yeah. You are.
What's that?
the taking college. You can get a college degree while you're in a ballet company, and a lot of ballet companies now have on-site programs to get into college. I mean,
Yeah.
to take college courses.
You can always go back to school. Always go back to school.
Sorry, Sharon, I cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, and that's at least that's what I did. I did first. I did community college classes, actual night classes, you know, and then I did something that's called the LEAP program, which is specifically for people, dancers who are in their professional careers and looking to get a bachelor's of fine arts. So there are and now as Nora said, there are companies that are affiliated with college programs. So it is definitely doable. And then would you recommend going to bigger college with a big name instead of an online college or a community college?
That depends on the degree you're after. Does that make sense? If you are trying to go out onto Broadway, for instance, we're just going to talk to musical theater, and you go to, say, oh, let's just pick a really small college. Oh, I can't even remember. There's Appalachian State, or, Western Carolina has a small musical. Nobody's gonna know who you are or where you're from. If you come out of Juilliard and they see Juilliard, they're gonna say, oh, you went to Juilliard. So pedigree matters. Now, if you're getting a degree in mathematics and you're going off to do something else, doesn't matter that much. No. If you're doing computer science, doesn't matter that much. So depends on what you're gonna go do. So that's one of the hard things, and that's something you just kind of have to, as Nora said, talk to people, find out. You go to a different program, you're going to, you just have to. So online schools, because of COVID, online programs are starting to have a better reputation than they used to. So if you're doing truly online, that said, as a person who teaches at a university, guest teaches, there is nothing more important sometimes than being in the classroom. There's things that you do not learn by being online. You might end up with a good skill set, but stuff happens in the classroom, and you probably have experienced this already if you've been stuck homeschooled enough, and online, it just is not the same thing. So one of the things that you don't build online is connections. You don't. You're in a classroom with a professor, and you go to apply for a job, and they write you that letter of recommendation. Go to graduate school, they write you that online. They're not going to learn who you are. They're not. They're less likely to help you too. Easier to punch a button and shut you off. So you're more likely to get help if you're in person. So in-person experience is invaluable, honestly. And it works that way, in just about any field you go into.
So. Yeah, I would agree with that too, but it also depends on why you're going to college.
Right.
Are you going to college just for the degree? If you're going to college for the degree, I don't actually encourage anybody to do anything just for the degree.
No.
I think that a degree is more and more overstate. It's over valued at this point. I don't think. I agree totally with Andrew that pedigree matters, but I think that you can make up for pedigree in other ways, and it depends on who you are. Mm-hmm. And even connections, if you're somebody who is extremely outgoing and follows up and connects, like if any of you if you're somebody who's interested in lines, will actually send me an email after this, then you're someone who it's not going to really matter where you are because you're someone who's going to follow up and make an opportunity out of anything. All right. So if you're somebody who's actually going to reach out to Andrew and I to pick our brains because you just met us, you'll be fine. If you're someone who really is a little bit more introverted, has a harder time, and nothing against introverts, because introverts, are mostly the ones who have changed the planet. But in terms of social and creating network, you may need to be in an environment where creating network is easier. because it's harder for you to reach out on your own. So you have to go with who you are too, and what environment is going to be best for you, and what is the reason you're doing it. You know, what places in your life, and online means that it's creating more space for something else. Maybe like, what's the reason? You know, so there's a lot of questions there, and that's why I think it's good for you to build on. This is all really practical information. It's a lot to sort through, and it's great that you have someone like Sharon. If you aren't taking her class, I strongly encourage you to sign up for it, or reach out to Andrew, who is obviously coaching a lot of dancers, and you know, reach out to somebody who can help you design your personal path, because it's going to be different for every single person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, for me, I did online classes because that was the only way. You know, I was doing Principal of Swan Lake and also taking, I think I was, what was I taking? I don't know. Oh, I was taking arts history, which by the way, seems like it should be like, oh, arts history. Oh my God, it was the most work of any class I ever did. But I remember like doing Odette Odile the next day, and I'm like, do I darn my point shoes or do I finish my homework? You know, how late do I stay up before I'm doing the lead in Swan Lake tomorrow? You know, so
you actually told me you had homework.
What's that?
You actually told me you had homework.
Oh, right. You came out to visit when it, yeah. So,
you do the show. So you actually told me, I'm sorry, I have homework tonight.
Yeah. So, but I could not take on more than one class at a time. Maybe if I had a hard half of the season, I knew there's no way I could do a course that time. So it was slow for me, but I still could do college. That was the one way I could do it. So it just depends on where you're at in your life and how you can make that fit in. And there's nothing. My father, he was a high school teacher for 40 years. And he said, there's no shame in taking community college for your first couple of years. If you can't afford a big 4-year college, or, you know, you get what you need, and then you can do, you know, the next. So I think, you know, there's also that piece.
Yeah. A lot of people are doing community college now for their first 2 years because they can't afford the 4-year, and then you end up graduating from a name school. So you get the pedigree.
Yeah.
You know?
That works too. It also gives you a chance, if you're, you know, staying at home, you get a chance to explore more of who you are. So I have a number of students that do that.
Yeah. So many options. And as Nora said, I mean, really it's the two pieces again. You have to know yourself, which is the hardest thing to do at your ages, I think. I don't know. I think it's hard to do at any age, but there are, you know, practices that you can do to get in touch with that, so that it's not always about what's out there and what's on social media and what you should be doing and what this person is doing, and, you know, that name company or that name school. What's most important is what's driving you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one big topic that we didn't cover at all is body image, you know, and body aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's part of that's part of a choice too.
Mm-hmm.
Is choose to be in an environment where the body aesthetic is healthy for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that briefly, and that applies not just to trainee programs, that applies to colleges. Mm-hmm. You would think that it doesn't, but it does. So
it's changing, and you're the generation that's going to change it. You know, you're the generation that's going to make it understandable that every healthy body is attractive. Every healthy body is beautiful to watch in movement.
Yeah, we are out of time, but Nora, if you guys don't mind staying on, and if you have to leave, I understand. You have my email. I put it in the chat. If I don't have your email, please put that in the chat so I can send you the recording if you like, and then these materials. And Nora just put her email in the chat. Thank you. I would love, Nora, for you to tell the story of because Nora actually teaches in the Lines program, and she told me this story where she had a video of you know, the dancers who were the perfect aesthetic, and then the dancers that actually made people feel something.
Oh, yeah.
Um, would you mind
I don't
sharing?
remember exactly the story that I told you. I didn't even remember telling you a story. Um, I think that what I chose was I chose some dancers that didn't have what everybody would think was the beautiful, perfect body. Like one dancer that I was really enamored with was Marcia Heide when I was growing up, who was very, very, you know, extremely small. Her legs were not very long. She didn't have the most beautiful face. And when she danced, she transformed. If you just look her up, watch a video of Marcia Heide. She was one of the most, and she was Cranko's muse, and he choreographed a lot of beautiful, beautiful work on her. Um, but I think that when you dance, you don't look at I remember I had really good feet, and I remember somebody coming up to me and saying after an audition, saying, "You're the one with the feet." And I remember feeling insulted by that because I had just done a heartfelt, and I didn't want to be seen as somebody who just had feet. And even like Sylvie Guillaume, when you watch her, and I know there's the more probably contemporary version of her at this point, but when you watch her dance classical roles, all you see is her body. When you watch her do contemporary roles, you see her soul. And I think it would be important to watch her do like the Maxette video that's out there, and then watch her do a classical role and see the difference in what I'm talking about, because she's an extraordinary artist, but it gets lost sometimes because of her physique. And I don't know if that's exactly what I said to you, Sharon, but I think that's the gist, is that when you are totally and completely immersed in what you are doing, whatever it is, you are attractive. You are attractive. Your eye goes to someone. Watch a ballet class. Go in the front of the room and watch a rehearsal and see where your eye goes. It's going to go to the person who's the most immersed in what they're doing. That's what attracts your eyes, not the person who's self-conscious, not the person who's thinking about what it is that they're doing. And that's what you want to be when you go into an audition. You want to be the person who's so immersed in your musicality and your movement and just doing it, no matter whether you know the choreography or you don't know the choreography. You're just giving it everything you have. You will get hired over somebody who is self-conscious, even if they have the body type. So, I mean, I think that's the message of what I was whatever I was saying in that story, Sharon. I don't remember the exact story, but I do often, I'll show the two different videos of somebody who's completely immersed and doesn't have the body, and somebody who isn't. And you'll get moved. You want to be moved by an artist, not just wowed, right? Like, wow, look at those legs and feet. Wow, I was really moved by that. Which would you prefer? Keep that though, because it's not how we act. We act more about, we want to be the person with the body, with the legs and the feet. We don't act like the person who wants to be the person who moves everyone else, right? Okay. Keep that in mind when you're taking a class.
Keep that in mind when you're looking at Instagram. What you see is people post their best. I want to know how many takes people. I loved it when Anna Ohl, this summer, she's principal with Dutch National, went epic fail and put this variation. She's so technically pure. She's also a beautiful, expressive performer. So you can watch her. She's a good example of somebody who you feel moved. Even just watching her on film, she can do that for you. But she fails. She has no problem showing you her bad side. I'm in love with you even more as a performer because I see you're human. Instagram is so much, my students are like, they'll take things over and over and over again to put it up on these accounts. And I'm like, but that's not what the art is about. That's not. It's being able to, it's my favorite shows. And I know Sharon has probably shows like this too. And one of my best shows was I finished that second act of Swan Lake at the Kennedy Center, and you could hear the velvet hit the stage. It wasn't just me on that stage. It was me with my Odette and the entire Swan Corps, and that you could hear the chain. It was so quiet in the audience. And then this is intermission. They were on their feet, standing ovation. That was one of the times I felt like, wow, this is why I dance. Now, feet, legs, that's not me. That's not me. It's the ability to bring people to tears, make them laugh, make them feel something, which is why live theater will never die. So,
Yeah.
have you, a good person to talk to about body image a little bit is actually Aji, who you probably know, Nora, Aji Sisko from Lines.
Yeah, I mean,
Kind
like 3 generations after me, but yes, I know Aji. I don't know her well. She's not my, I'm not so connected with Lines at the moment. But
again, I just happened. I happened to help mentor her through her ABT training this last year, so this last summer.
She's
so that's how I got to know her. She was this person, this beautiful dancer that was asking me for help. I had no idea who she was. I found out later. I was like, wow, you really can dance. But she was telling a story to the ABT. She trained with ABT in New York, and they only took her to a certain level and said, well, really, no. And if you watch her on anything she posts and with Lines and what Alonzo King does with her, it's just beyond belief.
Yeah. But she wasn't that when she first came. She grew a lot.
Yeah, just amazing. So, wow. Yeah.
So, wow, there's a lot here. I hope that you got something out of this, and leaving it on the note that wherever you go, you're going to grow. Point taken, right? And so, yes. Any other questions? Okay.
Could I know it's over time, but I would be interested in just hearing your voices, and just having maybe just hear just a couple of words of what you're taking away from this class, if you don't mind. If you're comfortable doing that, I would just like to hear each one of you talk before we leave. I know dancers don't really talk, but one just left. So, what are you taking away from this? What's your big takeaway? Just one sentence or a couple of words, whatever. There's no right or wrong. Elise.
I really, really like the part where you were talking about how, like, when you're injured sometimes, or like whatever situation you're in, it's like kind of like the chance to see if, like, to prove you can become great instead of just becoming good. So I really like that part.
Yes. Do you mind, Elise, if this is perfect for you? Do you want to share why that is?
Yeah. So I broke my 5th metatarsal last Monday, and so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was really, really stressed out about that, but it kind of like makes me look at it differently now.
So glad.
Injuries, from a biological perspective, injuries help you to retrain. So if you're a professional athlete, you have an off season for a reason. And as somebody who trains athletes, you go into an off season and you go back to the basics to make yourself a better athlete. You're constantly rebuilding yourself, and an injury is going to force you to do that. Neurologically, it gives you a chance to reboot. If you're constantly doing the same mistake over and over and over again and don't step away from it, you'll never get out of it. By being injured and having a couple of weeks off, a month off, 6 weeks off, you can actually get around some of the problems you had with your technique. And often my dancers that I coach come back and go well above and beyond anything they could have done prior. So they use it as a springboard and a launch point. So it can work for you beautifully.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Elise. It means a lot to know that helped. Thank you. I think I saw Madeline and Aviva's hand up.
Yeah.
And also Elsa's.
Madeline, you want to unmute?
I really liked how you talked about instead of like kind of like overfilling like the to-do list or whatever, how it's better to be comfortably challenged because then you don't like exert all your energy in trying to just accomplish all these like material things, and like it just, yeah, I just like that.
Yeah, thank you. That also is great to know. Sharon, you pick, you choose.
Aviva, you can go next.
Well, I feel like I'm taking away a lot from this, but when you asked like what, like one thing that really stood out to you, to me was it was the same for me as Elise, the injury thing. What you talking about, that was, well, Sharon knows my whole stuff I've been through, but I've recovered from meningitis, and I had an ankle injury that led to surgery. So there's been a lot of injury and illness, and I even wrote down the wording that you used, the "here's my moment to step into greatness." So I don't know, it really, really stood out to me and helped me a lot.
So happy. I saw you with tears. I saw that really moved you. I also want to be clear that this is not just about injury. It's about all challenges. It's about rejection. It's about all moments where you feel like you're ready to give up. Any moment in your life where you feel like that's it. That's the moment you get to step into greatness. That's the moment. I think Elsa, was it Elsa? Did you have your hand up?
I really loved the part where we talked about having a plan B, because I like to be really planned out, and I want to help to hear that like plan B is still okay, you know, like that's still a valuable option.
Thank you.
Hazel.
I really appreciate how, even though the workshop, like there was a lot of it about dance, I really appreciate that y'all also included musical theater, because that is the career path that I am planning to take. And I also think it's really cool how many things in dance can transfer over to musical theater, like art to art, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Awesome.
I'm so glad, Hazel, that you were able to get that. Taryn?
I think it's great to know that there's a place for everyone, even if it doesn't feel like it at the moment, that there is a certain place for you to be, and you take a path for a reason.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's so many of my students, you'll discover this over and over and over again throughout your life. And I can say this, if you really want to do something, don't stop trying.
Mm-hmm.
Don't stop trying. You don't know where you're going to land. You don't know when that opportunity is going to open or where it's going to come from. And yeah, I've seen beautiful things happen to so many people just because they were determined.
Yeah. I mean, I live by the credo that the universe wants you to be happy. And the universe will help you to be happy if you let it. That's my thought. I mean, that's my experience over and over again. And I know that Sharon has experienced that as well. And I've been, with her at some very dark times, and I've seen her emerge, always taking her moment for greatness. So I'm really, I think that you have a wonderful mentor in her.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes we just got to get out of our own way, right? The universe wants us to be happy.
Yeah, I think so. I think it does. Have to believe it.
Right. Anybody else want to? Alexis, I can't see you, and certainly you can stay muted if you like, or you can offer anything if you want.
It was really meaningful when you mentioned how immersion in dance was almost more important than the technique. That was very inspiring. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Alexis.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing more attractive than somebody who is in love with what they're doing. I think so. All right. Well, I think if there are no other questions, and I know you all can be a little shy, so you can last chance to put anything in the chat if you want, or raise your hand. And I know we went over, but I think it was well worth it. Thank you so much, Nora and Andrew, for this.
Thank you.
Really, so appreciate this, and I think I speak for everybody that this has been just a really enriching workshop on so many levels.
It's wonderful to see all your smiling faces.
Yes. And yeah, Nora has put her email, Andrew's put his email in the chat. If for some reason you just can't find it, you all know how to get a hold of me. So I can also connect you, and that's very generous of both of you to offer to.
Yep, just reach out. I'll answer questions. So
total pleasure. And also, if you're interested in gyrotonic and using that as a second career, Sharon knows, we do courses here, so she can connect you with that too. That's something that can help you to support yourself while you're dancing. That's something that I can offer you.
Yes, I mean, it's definitely.
And Sharon, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
So great. And so great to learn. Andrew, I want your PowerPoint, please. Can I pay you for it?
Yeah. You guys can all have it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
It's great it's such a great amount of information. I'm really grateful to have that available. And
yeah,
it was so good to meet you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. And I'm going to stop the recording here.